This is Blue Left, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the underrepresented Democratic voices in Tennessee, working tirelessly to bring progressive change to the volunteer state. Here's your host, Peggy Kingsbury.
That's right. From grassroots organizers to community leaders, from urban centers to rural towns, we'll highlight the diverse perspectives and powerful voices that often go unheard. Join us as we lift up the blue wave and shine a light on the path toward a more inclusive and equitable Tennessee. Again, I'm your host, Peggy Kingsbury, and this is Blue Lift, where every voice matters. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends. So glad you all could join us again for this next episode of Blue Lift. We are at the end of the candidates that we will be interviewing on Blue Lift for this particular wave. We'll be back at it in 2026 for sure.
Yes.
But today I have with me Dr. LaRhonda Williams, and I'm so excited to have my friend here. And as you folks from Blue Lift know, I only invite people I like, and here we go again. LaRhonda comes to us with one of the most interesting, varied backgrounds I've quite frankly ever heard of. LaRhonda has a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's degree in criminal justice, so we share that in common. I also have that.
We do.
And she has a doctorate in education. Now, you might be asking yourself, what do politics, criminal justice, and education have to do with each other? Well, we're about to find out.
Right.
LaRhonda's background, when I read your background, LaRhonda, I think that the richness of it probably comes, and you correct me if I'm wrong, from your mom and dad.
Yes.
Your mom was an educator, your dad a veteran and educator, and he was a prisoner of war.
Yes, 314 days.
Tell us about your mom, and then let's talk about your dad.
Sure. My mother, my late mother, she passed last year, 2023. Oh, not a problem. But she held two master's degrees.
Oh, wow.
In education, and she was an educational specialist from Union University, degree in that as well. So she was a counselor, worked all across the country because we traveled so much being in the military. And she instilled those traits of service, those traits of understanding that communities and people are different and that you have to use your talents to be able to help others. So my twin sister and I, very diverse backgrounds. LaShonda is into banking and finance and mathematics. Even though in reverse side, I started out that way younger. And she was into English and I was into math and science. And then when fourth grade hit, we kind of changed that around. We flipped it, yes. And then with me, I've always been in the service industry, working with people and providing my skill set in grant writing and communication to ensure that infrastructures and foundations were set. So once I left, someone else can come in and can continue with the improvements.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So important.
And I got those traits from my mother and from my father. Like we said, he was a prisoner of war. Was a pilot.
And he was he a lieutenant colonel?
Lieutenant colonel, yes, retired lieutenant colonel. He, POW, spent 314 days. He was shot down in Vietnam. And
how old were you when that happened?
Oh, we weren't born yet. Yeah, he came back to the United States back in 73.
I think everybody's as old as I am. Sorry,
I
LaRhonda.
love it. No. Just celebrated my 50th on the 1st of July.
So. I had a friend in grade school whose father was a POW, so I'm just assuming everyone's as old as I am.
I love it.
So you weren't born yet, but your mother had to endure that then on her own.
Yes, she did. There is a series on Richard Nixon, and my mother and father were featured in that series on Amazon.
Oh, wow. How about that?
CNN, yes. And my father met Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon when he came back, the late Senator McCain. And then in 2017, a Valid organization that works with Vietnam and military veterans, they actually flew him back to Vietnam, where he met the wife of the man that shot him down. And she was able to apologize to my father. My father hugged her and said, you know what, we are all human beings. We are all Christ-like, and I forgive you.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was able to spend 2 weeks in Vietnam.
That's a beautiful story. So when are you going to write his book?
Oh, well, that is in the works. That is in the works. I
can't imagine how wonderful that would be.
Yeah, very few Black POWs and Black pilots in this country.
Yes.
And my father represents that number.
And that's a big lift for someone to represent a whole group of people like that. But I'm sure, knowing you, and I can see the DNA you're made of, he did it really well.
Well, thank you.
But yes, that's a book and a movie right there. But
yes,
certainly a book, because I'm hoping that he left you a lot of good memories and details on the things that happened to him.
Oh, yes. Still very active.
Yeah.
We were hoping to get a celebration soon. People are fighting for him for Veterans Day. They always do. So he has a program designated for that for next month. And
how old is he now?
Daddy? Oh, I didn't announce it on the radio. He's just turned 80.
Wow.
On the 31st of August.
And he's doing well.
Oh, yes, still active. Still active.
That is fantastic.
Yes.
Where does he live?
He lives in Georgia.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was raised in Georgia, in Gainesville.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Wow. What a wonderful background you have. And I'm sure all the listeners are figuring out right now that that's the foundation for what we are going to talk about today and the things that you've done. It's incredible.
Thank you.
So what made you decide to major in political science?
Oh, I have always been interested in the decisions of why. And, of course, government runs under that premise. So when I started out in college, English was my major because I was considering law school. And that's why I came to Tennessee for Vanderbilt, of all things for my shoes. And
in case the listeners don't know, she pranced in here wearing Alabama Hey Dudes.
Yes, I'm still Roll Tide.
I'm all about anchoring down.
Yeah,
so, but we still love each other.
We still love each other. Yes, like I said, I'm still taking my moment of silence. But the study of political science looks at the infrastructures, looks at the decision making, looks at the why we do what we do in government. And it just introduced so many prospects for me to say, this is an area where I'm very interested in and want to get involved in. So I worked in Alabama for the governor's office. I worked in the communications division, internship there.
Who was the governor at that time?
Oh, gosh, put me on the spot. Oh,
yeah. I can't remember.
92. I'll come back to that.
Yeah, doesn't matter. I was just curious.
Okay. And then I worked with Congressman Lillard in D.C., internship there. And that was just my introduction of knowing that this is something that I want to do. All my life I thought I was going to be an attorney. And like I said, I was looking at Vanderbilt for that. And then when I moved to Tennessee, I had this epiphany moment that there's just so many attorneys in this country right now.
Yeah, there are.
When you turn around, there's an attorney.
I'm from a family of attorneys, and I didn't go that route either.
Exactly. But it goes back to what I was saying about my mother and my father instilling those gifts. Because my gift of communication could have put me in a position where I could have made a lot of money as an attorney. With my persuasive words.
I believe that totally.
Right, but I decided...
And your written word is excellent.
Thank you.
Also.
Thank you. But I decided, I need to use my talents in a way that's going to make an impact. So at the last minute, I enrolled at MTSU and TSU because I had a dual program for criminal justice administration. And I started that journey there.
So you got your poli-sci degree, and then you immediately went on and got your master's in criminal justice. Mm-hmm. And I know that you worked in that field for a while.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, gosh. It was exciting. I was, of course, much smaller and much more in shape then, but, can carry a gun in heels and business suits and then work in the community and
you were a parole officer, probation officer?
No, I started in the institutions as a supervisor, working at Turney Center and at South Central.
Okay.
And then matriculated up through manager to district director, supervising the sex offender unit and the gang unit and intensive unit in Nashville, and then became the parole director and then warden.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Warden.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, for a woman to be in that position and a woman of color, talk to us about how that went.
My military background, being an Air Force brat, my family, my siblings and I, we've traveled across the country, lived in different countries and states, and that has provided us an opportunity to be able to adapt very easily and to adjust to environments. When people meet me, they see a person that is there to assist. And a lot of times people have told me that they missed the color aspect of it. Just a person that is able to provide assistance. And I've had some ups and downs. And those ups and downs have created an environment for me to realize that you still have to fight.
Right.
You still have to represent well. And then work on changing the assumptions.
There you go.
And, we're seeing that more and more every day.
We are.
And we're seeing, some instances where, young women and young men of color, they need to see that positiveness. So happy to see that you had young Wilco on your last show.
Yes.
And continuing that fight of equity in this country.
Right. Ravita's a really good example of what you're saying.
Yeah, she is.
Yes.
But I came into the environment, my officers that I worked alongside with, I never saw myself as the person ahead. I always worked alongside with my officers. And they respected that in me, But of course, the inside joke, I always tell people that, Sarah Palin ran on this premise that, she was the original Pitbull lipstick, and my officers will tell you, no, that's actually Director Williams. She was
there you go.
The original Pitbull
Director
lipstick.
Williams.
Yes, she would, I would walk into a courtroom and people say, oh my God, here we go. Now this is the last resort. We don't want to see her. But they knew if I was there, there's something serious.
Right.
Because I believe in using all elements to try to help somebody to get in a place of reinventing themselves and to become better citizens and to work on those premises. So if it got to the point where I had to walk in court, then you knew something was wrong.
Right. It had gotten to the point where maybe restorative justice wasn't an option anymore.
Exactly.
So you spent time working in facilities and in, on the floor, and then all the way up through running those facilities, being in charge.
Yes.
Were you ever as a probation or parole officer? Was that ever part of what you did?
No, I came in as a supervisor.
Okay.
I came in under leadership. When I took the position at Attorney Center, they needed somebody that would be willing to go to Attorney Center 1, because I was living in Fairview then, and that wasn't too far for me to travel.
Right.
And also, too, they had some goals in mind.
Gotcha.
So, of course, I wore the uniform. I worked. I did home visits. I went to the units. I spoke with the inmates. I went to court. I just was able to come in with my master's in a leadership role,
right,
as compared to starting out as an officer, but received the same support in any ways, because again, I would get my nails dirty just like anybody else.
Right. And the reason I ask that is, I know that part of your candidacy, you focus on criminal justice, and I always think, based on my background in criminal justice, that there are a couple of roles in criminal justice. Most of the roles are underpaid, but really those folks who work in our prisons and the people who are probation parole officers, those jobs we really need top talent in those roles.
Oh, yes. Probation and parole, we are the proactive side.
Right.
We are working towards keeping people in the community.
How can we stop the recidivism train?
Exactly.
Yes.
So we're incorporating home visits very delicately. We're doing the inspections with employment. We are helping our returned citizens get into counseling and to be involved with their families and trying to keep them from swaying back to what can be comfortable.
Right.
And in this time of year, you see numbers actually increasing with violations because of holidays, because of the stressors of how can I continue to take care of my family at the same time to still be productive as well as follow my conditions of supervision. So our officers are very proactive, and the Department of Correction has done so well. The recidivism rate has been steady at a low rate because of all the work that probation and parole officers are doing, and what we're doing in institutions too. I mean, people, I think they forget that when 95% of our returned citizens will come back into the community. So while they're incarcerated, they're taking programs. They are, we have at the women's facilities, we have a weekend overnight visits for children to come in to spend time with their mothers.
Oh, that's important.
And so all that family unification, treatment, that all intertwines with the everyday actions of what a inmate goes through while they're incarcerated. So it's preparing them to go on to hopefully meet the parole board, get those conditions in place, and serve the rest of their sentence in the community.
And be a part of the community.
Exactly.
And build a family, a community.
Yeah.
So I want to then jump right into a big question.
Okay.
What do you think of Core Civic?
Ooh.
And for those listeners who don't know, Core Civic is a private a company that owns, runs, and manages prisons. Tennessee says we can have one of those in the state, but we actually have a lot more because some counties will build a facility and then lease it to Core Civic. And Core Civic has had some issues, some big issues. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, well, I'm not really for privatizations of prisons. I know it can help save funding from the state level, but when you think of privatizations, remember you're thinking of individualized plans, and because of underfunding of how officers are paid and lack of officers in facilities, the accountability piece is always missing. And the CEO of Core Civic is rumored to want to run for governor, and it's a money pit. It's a money pit.
I mean, it's a business for them.
It's a business,
so they're making a business out of
taking care of people,
and trying to get people on a better path. And obviously, they think they can do it for less money than the state can do it.
Right.
And so you're putting a price on the head of people.
Exactly.
And, logic would tell anyone who really thinks about this issue is Core Civic only makes money per prisoner.
Exactly.
So how motivated are they to reduce the population?
Exactly. And unfortunately,
it's not a good business plan.
No, it's not. It is. But you can make it a good business plan if you have people in your pockets to ensure that you have people coming into your facilities.
That's right. And those ways come through laws for, petty crimes.
Exactly.
That sort of thing.
Right. Governor Lee in 2021, he brought in the Alternatives to Sentencing Act, which provides resources to keep people in our communities and to keep businesses to hire returned citizens.
Right.
And then you're seeing this pivotal change where we're going back to be more punitive.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're making it back to a political incidence as compared to a social service.
And if punitive worked, we'd be the safest country in the history of the world, wouldn't we? Because we put a lot of people in jail.
Right. When you consider the history of corrections, you consider the history of our American jails. Jails were created for temporary residencies, like I used to tell my officers. This is a temporary opportunity for people to be separated from society, to learn themselves again. And it's our responsibility to prepare them to return back. That's why the percentage is so high. 95% of our returned citizens will come back into our communities. And we have to spend more time in our communities preparing them to accept them back.
Right.
We have to put more funding into businesses and organizations that are willing to work with returned citizens. Because contrary to popular belief, they are doing well in society. We put barriers like restoring their voting rights, which it's become ridiculous.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. They make it harder for people who are wanting to do better, and they are doing better. and just this fear of recognizing that. But it's much more popular to talk about how people are doing wrong. It's much more popular to talk about how people are murdering and rapes and all that. But even though these violent offenses, the numbers are high according to FBI reports, people that come back into our institutions come back for more technical violations. And those like not reporting, not paying their fees, or
now I want to make sure that the listeners catch that.
Yes.
So recidivism means that you've been in prison and you show back up, and then that puts you on the recidivism train where you just keep doing it again. You go in and out, and then eventually you wind up there for a very long time.
Right.
And what you're telling us is that many of the people who serve their time and are released to the community to begin to rebuild their lives, etc., come back into prison not because of the recommission of a violent crime, but because of a technicality like they couldn't pay a fine or they missed a visit with their parole officer.
Yeah, and then those technical violations, they continue to add up.
Right.
So sentencing judges just have no other option other than to reviolate and put them back into the institutions. And when you sit down and talk to some of these inmates when they are engaging in those behaviors, a lot of times, like I said, look at the numbers between now and October to April.
So there's a stressor. The holidays create a stressor.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that a shame?
It is.
That we've turned, what for many is a religious holiday into a stressor for families to the point that people who are already living by a thread just completely let go. And with my education in criminal justice, I always remember certain things about it, and I haven't been in the field for a while. I've done some adjunct instructing, which I know you have, but I haven't actually been in the uniform in a long time. But I do know when I was getting my master's, we studied a lot about crime causation, and then also what are the things that do work to slow down or stop recidivism.
Right.
And it's always to me, I was just struck by it's the things that we actually can do.
Right.
It's education and it's employment.
Right.
And there's no reason why we can't offer those things.
Exactly. Education, employment, and housing.
And housing, yes. And that is just so standard.
Yeah.
And when we think about people who are successful in society, in American society, they have education, they have employment, and they have housing, dependable, solid, affordable housing.
Right.
And those are three things we can do.
We can. And it makes such a big difference.
And it's just always surprised me that we don't do any of those things on a real solid basis for those who are incarcerated. We don't think about those things. Sometimes there are educational opportunities offered, but it's not across the board and it's not mandatory.
Right.
I know, for example, in Tennessee, we have Columbia State Community College in this Middle Tennessee area, and they will go into facilities and offer entry-level college courses for inmates.
Oh, we have more.
And they do that free, because we have the all sorts of programs to pay for that. But we actually have facilities that won't do it. They just won't have them in. And I was told in Williamson County one of the issues is because that the inmates might have to get on the internet to do their lessons. Well,
that's
other counties have solved that problem, and no, that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, at the women's prison, Lipscomb University offers both associates, bachelor's, and the master's program to those young ladies at Turney Center. Nashville State is involved, Lane College in West Tennessee, and they have textbooks. They study in their cells. They meet at the library. It's considered a job for them, and there's no computer access.
Right. It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's not necessary.
Exactly.
So again, it's those premises of people just sensationalizing something so people would not be able to support it. But I know, there's young ladies right now who are here in Nashville who have received their degrees from Lipscomb and are doing very well out here in society.
I know there are lots and lots of positive stories.
Yes.
Well, let's flip gears just a little bit.
Okay.
I know we've already talked about your dad, and so you're running for a seat in the state legislature, and who is your opponent?
His name is Lee Reeves.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And for those listeners who don't know, Lee Reeves was in a primary.
Yes.
For his ability, or he wanted to be the Republican nominee for this job that LaRhonda is about to take from him, and yes. He had a lot of big money behind him because it all came down to school vouchers.
Yes.
He is a promised vote for yes to school vouchers. Mm-hmm. And so the people who love school vouchers and who are funding all of that put $1 million behind him for a primary for a state representative job. It's crazy, and
it was a
million plus actually.
Yeah, I was flabbergasted when I saw the number.
We never would have dreamt that.
No, just one candidate, and ironically, when you think about the other two that Governor Lee could have selected, I mean, one. She was very influential with doing policy work for the Republican Party.
Right.
And then two, you have another one that has years of experience of working in local government and county government. And for you to choose someone that is just there, bought and paid for.
Just for vouchers.
Just for vouchers. One-sided candidate.
Right. He has no experience in government like Brian Beathard did.
No,
I know.
And then, of course, the attacks. Of course, this was my political science side just coming out. Wow.
I know. They were pretty vicious for a small,
Yeah, of course, 65 is just fantastic. But, it's like one of my students that came up to me and said, man, it's just kind of savage, Miss Williams. I said, I know. It's just, how they just attacked Brian and the literature that went out. And I think people just tend to forget that people have families.
That's right.
And
it was a very dirty race.
It was a dirty race.
To get that Republican nomination.
Yeah. And people should really look at the character of a person, of how they carry themselves throughout an election.
And he won by 95 votes.
95 votes. So all that money.
We just talked with Dr. Andreessen, and many of you will have heard that episode right before you hear this one, and we talked about the very low voter turnout, but 95 votes was the difference. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about vouchers. What's your stand on that?
Totally against them.
And talk to us about why.
Well, I'm a firm believer in our public schools. Here in Williamson County, we're number one in the state, followed by Franklin Special District.
Which is also in Williamson County.
Which is also Williamson County.
We have private level schools for free.
Yes,
It's what we have.
But think of the statistics. 71 of our students, 71 students had a perfect ACT score in Williamson County. 71 students.
Wow.
97.
Everybody wrap your head around that. 97. There are districts where no student gets a perfect ACT.
But remember, the perfect score is 36.
Right.
We had 97 students that scored 35.
Wow.
80% of our public school students choose to go to a university or college and are able to because they're prepared because of our public schools. We have the best teachers, even though they're underpaid. 314 of our students, and majority of them from Fairview, where I live, took advantage of our career technical education program. We have specialty that allows students to go into culinary arts, become CNAs, to go into mechatronics. To graduate with an associate degree and a high school diploma.
And that happens here. That's right.
In Williamson
I hope
County.
The listeners understand that. We have students who graduate already having an associate's degree.
Right. So when you're talking about, preparing that foundation and forward thinking, which thanks to Sam Winston, who brought in the mechatronics program at Fairview. Right. He's a forward thinker. Graduating at 18 with an associate's degree,
That's incredible. And the
Or
money that
17?
saves a family not having to pay for those 2 years of college.
Exactly. You have young people who are part of the ENT program.
Right.
Who can, EMT, excuse me, not ENT, but who can go in and continue on to become paramedics.
That's
and
right.
make good money before they even reach 21.
Isn't that something? Well,
You know?
and so I know that in Williamson County, we also have a population that generally has economic privilege.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, or I know that plays into some of this academic success in a
Right.
way. Talk to me about when people say to you, yeah, but okay, you might not need vouchers in Williamson County, but how about in the rural areas?
Right. Well, it's interesting. When you think about school vouchers, to some extent, that sounds like a liberal idea. Putting state money aside to help people.
Yeah.
But the average cost for a private school is about $11,000-14,000. Of course, in Williamson County, it's in the high 20s. So $7,500 is just not going to cut it for your average family.
In a rural area,
it's the same
still
way.
going to be $10,000
Exactly.
a student.
So if you have a household of 2 or 3 children, additional $9,000, where are you going to get that additional funding?
That's right.
That's
Right. And so many of our rural communities have no private schools.
Exactly.
And I believe that if vouchers do pass in Tennessee, we may see some small private schools spring up in rural communities. And my concern is the quality of those schools, the quality of the educators, the quality of the
Exactly.
schools. They cannot accept every student.
Right.
You may have a small school district in a rural county losing just enough funding that it affects the students who can't go to private school.
Right.
The student with disabilities, for example.
Exactly.
Special needs.
Exactly. Because they won't accept the federal funding.
That's right.
And, and even in 65, which I find interesting, my opponent was on Twitter and they were talking about, not taking federal funding or dropping the Department of Education. He said, I'm for that. But I think he forgets that in 65, we have Title I schools.
Sure we do.
We have schools that need those TAs, that need speech pathologists, that need social workers, that need school psychologists, that need students that need one-on-one assistance.
Right.
And when you and so you're advocating to remove a department that helps with funding, but you're also taking away services from people that you want to represent.
I know. I know.
And then secondly,
and if you're the parent of a child who's deaf, for example,
right,
or sight impaired, that is just harmful to that family to think that you're saying, well, we don't care about your student.
Exactly. I mean, we have students that suffer from anxiety and ADHD that just need just a couple of extra minutes.
Right.
So they can concentrate.
From a targeted, in a targeted way.
Right.
Yes.
Or they need that one-on-one so they can pass an exam.
Exactly.
Or that just those extra services. But then ironically too, his my opponent's wife, Dr. Claire Reeves, scientist, educator, ran on the premises of supporting public schools. And so she's an elected official that's on the school board that supports public schools. And then he's running on a campaign that's one-sided that supports vouchers.
Oh, we're about to find out how that marriage is going to work out because the Williamson County School Board is now going to, it's on the agenda for their next meeting to revisit their proclamation about vouchers. So I guess we'll have to see how Mrs. Reeves decides to vote, won't we?
And we'll also see where the direction of where we're going to.
Yes.
Was Bill Lee's plan right on target?
Well, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Well, let's talk about another topic that I know is very important to you. And when you're elected, this is something you'll be able to really do something with, and that is some Veterans Administration reforms in our state. Mm-hmm. What do you think is needed?
We need more services at the VA. And it's a generational change. My father's generation in the military compared to these young men and women who serve now.
It's a different kind of
it's
warfare.
a different type of warfare.
They have different injuries, a lot of different things.
A lot of different things. I mean, we talk about gun use and gunpowder, and to give an 18-year-old an assault rifle to go to another country to serve, and then to bring him or her back just for them to come back into an environment that's not supportive, but based on what they assumed they were going to walk back into. I mean, we just don't have enough resources in veteran affairs.
We don't.
And we need to put more emphasis on it. Our current commissioner of Veteran Affairs is doing a great job, and I admire their work. But we need to put more emphasis and more attention in those areas. I don't foresee another opportunity for us to be in a war, but we never know.
We never know.
But if we're going to get in that place, we need to make sure if we're going to send young people there, we need to be able to have services when they come back to help them transition back into society.
I think it's a real shame and a real black mark on our state and on our country when we don't do right by our veterans.
Oh, no.
And I know in many of the rural areas, we've just talked about with Dr. Andreessen about the lack of medical care facilities, mental health facilities, and hospitals in the rural areas. Many of our rural veterans can't get to the VA. Right. However, the government does pay for them to get some services in their own community, but we just don't have the resources.
Right.
We haven't expanded Medicaid. We've let rural hospitals close.
Exactly. Can you fathom that? A hospital closing?
And we just, so our veteran, we may have a young veteran out there really suffering, and he lives in a rural area, and he can't drive to Murfreesboro to the VA because it's 3 hours away.
Right. And then you see the reciprocal effect of what can happen. They engage in drug use to deal with the stressors and the anxiety.
That's right.
They engage in activities that are considered criminal that could result in them getting incarcerated.
That's right.
Or they're homeless.
Which is such a crying shame.
I met a veteran who told me at Turney Center he was homeless with his medals.
Oh, LaRhonda. Homeless with his medals. Wow. That's,
and he was younger than me. So
that's a real black mark on our society.
So we have to do better. We can't just say one thing for the purposes of making it a statement for the media and then turn around and turn our backs.
I agree with that. All of the anthem playing and the flag waving and all of that is meaningless if we're not really willing to back it up and take care of these folks who have served.
Right. I mean, how can you say that you're a U.S. congressman that served, and then when you have an opportunity to vote on a bill that can bring more funding to veteran affairs, you vote no?
And that happened.
And it happens.
It happened, and it will happen again probably.
Yes. So these elections are just so critical.
Yes.
So important.
To use politics to vote on something like that is just party politics.
Exactly.
On issues like that, which should be so simple.
Exactly.
Should be so simple. Voting for FEMA to have more funding.
Right.
So simple.
So simple.
Seems so easy.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about gun reform. You and I are both gun owners. We both know how to shoot guns.
Yes.
I think we probably both have an idea of who ought not to have a gun.
Right.
Talk to me about your ideas around gun reform.
Gun reform, very simple. We need to incorporate some common sense. And I hear the argument about, the Second Amendment. You're going to take away my guns. No one's taking away anybody's guns.
And, how long have we been hearing about that? They're going to take away our guns.
I know.
Have they ever taken anybody's guns away? Anybody's gun away.
Exactly.
I don't know anywhere in the whole country where anybody's gun has been taken away from them.
Exactly. But the reality is that there are certain guns that don't need to be in the hands of certain people. Assault rifles. For someone that owns one, I just cannot understand why when we know when people are impaired or have a deficiency or use those weapons for the purpose of violence, why we don't step up. I mean, there's so many things that we could be proud of in Tennessee, but there's two factors that are very concerning. One, Tennessee is 7th in the nation when it comes to domestic violence.
Wow. Which so often involves a firearm.
It does. And it starts out with a firearm in the form of intimidation, just placing it out there.
Yes.
I'm not going to use it. I just want you to see it.
I have it.
I have it. So why we don't listen to our subject matter experts, listen to our sheriff's association, listen to our chiefs of police, listen to our law enforcement agencies that are telling us red flag laws matter. Now, if you are a law-abiding citizen, no one's going to touch your gun.
That's right. That's right.
But if you are a person that incorporates intimidation, that incorporates fear, that is has an imbalance due to a mental health imbalance, and we need to go before a judge and ask a judge for a temporary placement of removal. That's the purpose of a red flag law.
I agree with that. The red flag law, for the listeners who don't know, simply says that sometimes someone who owns a gun is acting in a way to make others believe, wow, he or she is about to use that weapon to harm someone.
Exactly.
Whether it's themselves or other people. And as LaRhonda's explaining, there are many domestic situations where one of the partners will just say, by the way, you need to know I've got this gun.
Exactly.
And once that police report is filed, then I think it should be a very easy step for the family to go before a judge and say, we really don't want him or her to have access to guns for a while until we can get some mental help and we can figure out what this domestic violence situation is about. This is just someone who right now is not showing the capability to safely own a firearm.
Right. And it's a temporary.
It's temporary. Removal. Exactly.
And also too, and you remember walking in these shoes, one of the top 5 deadliest positions that you put an officer in is serving a warrant.
Absolutely.
So if you're going into a home of a man or a woman that finally the survivor has decided to have the strength to go before a judge and ask for an order of protection, this individual has spent 7 hours in jail.
Right. So
he or she's stewing. They're already upset because this person has done this to them.
Has taken an order of protection out.
Exactly.
Yes.
They're thinking about their livelihood. They're thinking about their popularity, that people are going to find out. Some people don't have the mindset to turn that off.
That's correct.
You're already in positions where if you've used intimidation, whether it's emotional, financial, spiritual, physical abuse, and you finally have been arrested temporarily, people can walk out of that jail after 7 hours upset to the point where they are looking for that gun to cause harm, or they're looking for that gun to kill somebody.
And I hope the listeners understand what LaRhonda is telling us here. It's that, just imagine yourself, and I'm just going to use the very typical situation. Mm-hmm. I know it's not always this way, but the very typical situation. Man and woman, he is abusive towards her.
Right.
And then he, she finally leaves and now he's stalking her, mm-hmm. right? So she finally gets enough. And she said, I've had enough. I'm going to get an order of protection against him because I don't want him to be within 20 feet of me. He doesn't need to be where I'm at. He doesn't need to come to my job. He doesn't need to, to follow me around town. He doesn't need to come to my house. Mm-hmm. I need to stay away from him. He's dangerous. He's threatened me.
Right.
And she goes before a judge, and the judge says, you know what, you're right.
Right.
You're right. He's been a very bad boy, and we're going to let him sit in jail for a little while this afternoon and stew off.
Right.
And he needs to cool off. And by the way, I'm going to say, the judge is going to say to him, you don't go anywhere near her. Right. If you do, we're going to lock you up.
Right.
And we send him home where he has his guns. Mm-hmm. So that's the situation you're describing. Get a man all ginned up. He's mad. She's embarrassed him. Mm-hmm. Now she's telling him, you can't be near me.
Right.
And we're sending him home where his guns are. No one stops to say, do you have firearms at home? Let's go check. Maybe you don't need to be around those for a while. While there's an order of protection out against you, you don't need to have access to guns.
Right.
It just makes common sense, doesn't it?
It does. And also the very uncomfortable reality, too, is that these households are in 65. these households
in our
are
district. Yes.
in Nashville.
Yes.
There are women that are experiencing this right now.
Yes.
And for some lawmakers, they don't want to hold their peers and their friends accountable.
That's true.
Some sentencing judges don't want to hold themselves or hold their golf buddies accountable.
That's right.
So you need these laws in place. I mean, we had a situation in Nashville where an officer was shot serving a warrant on someone that violated an order of protection. Again, it's a temporary removal.
That's
if
right.
you come back before the judge and the case is dropped or found to there's no adjudication, you fight to get your gun back.
Time has passed. And, he's gotten over her and moved on. And
exactly.
decided that, okay, I was acting a fool.
Right. So again, it's for law-abiding citizens, it's not going to be a problem. But for those that engage in those behaviors, particularly when it comes to domestic violence, we need to put things in place to not only have a safeguard for the law enforcement officer, but also for the survivor and the family.
That's right. That's right.
Two, like I mentioned, we have two things in Tennessee two instances. Just last year, we had a school-based shooting.
Yeah, we did.
My alumnus from Tribeca, the principal at Covington School was murdered, along with a beloved janitor and families and children, and that was in the hands of someone that was imbalanced that had access to an assault rifle.
Several.
Just a couple of months ago, Page High School.
That's right.
A young lady was killed at a party just after graduating from high school. And the young man who had his father's gun didn't realize that it was loaded. And when I teach classes and when I talk to my community, I have to remind people that when you shoot a gun is not operated like a cell phone. You don't push a button. You have to load it. The barrel has to be lifted. You are aiming it, and you're pulling a trigger. The trigger has to be pulled for the gun to operate.
That's right.
And this happened at a party that took a young lady's life.
At a party in a subdivision in Franklin.
Exactly. With an assault rifle. Now, why would he bring an assault rifle to a graduation party? I don't know. But it happened.
And why was it in a place where he had access to it?
Exactly. A young man in Nashville injured and killed one of his classmates, age 14, because they were playing around with their father's gun.
So safe storage is something.
Safe storage is and it's common sense. I mean, we're seeing commercials now where they're talking about the importance of locking your guns away, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. But
it needs to be a requirement. And let's not even talk about arming our teachers.
Well, you and I both know that's absurd.
Exactly. And that the bill doesn't discuss anything about storage. It does discuss about teachers having to take 40 hours of training. Now, of course, the teacher's required to do that. They want to carry a gun, but no one else in Tennessee is required to do that.
But then it also, I believe it says that if she or the educator, could be a man, is carrying a weapon, they cannot carry it into a parent-teacher conference or if they have to be in a conference with the kids, say down at the principal's office. So then one says, well, what are they supposed to do with it?
Right.
Then every kid in the school knows that Mr. Jones has this gun and, he's down in the principal's office with somebody.
Right.
Reckon where he put it.
Exactly.
They don't do any discussion about that at all.
No.
Yeah. And we know because of our backgrounds that 40 hours is fine, but in the heat of the moment.
Oh, yes.
You're not going to hit targets that you shoot at all the time. How many times do we see, police officers shooting
everywhere,
multiple rounds
all over the place,
right? Shooting each other all over the place.
And exactly, and I explain it to people. An active shooter episode. It's like having your eyes closed because you have no idea where the shooter is.
That's right.
So if you are not trained in that mindset. One thing about officers and the thing that we incorporated when I wrote the policy in 2013 to get our probation and parole officers a commission to carry. we offered an incentive and pay. So every month you got an additional amount of money so you can go to the range, practice. We had simulations and trainings every month to constantly keep your mindset going and to keep you in a place where you understand the importance of why you're caring.
So I want to make sure the listeners understand what LaRhonda has just revealed to us. So I knew this, and I had forgotten to put it on my little paper here, but you actually wrote a policy that is still followed for the state of Tennessee where probation and parole officers can carry weapons, correct?
Yes, I was on that committee. Mm-hmm.
And so with that responsibility, you backed that up with constant training and the funding for the officers to get their constant training, constant awareness.
Right.
And the difference between that and just Joe Blow walking into the gun shop and buying a gun.
Exactly.
In Tennessee.
Exactly. Any law enforcement officer would tell you it's a mindset. And some officers, good and bad, you have to know how to de-escalate. So teaching is challenging.
Yes, it is.
And so, again, I just can't fathom the idea of a teacher being in that situation where you hear the code, because they're going to say a code. And you should know what that code means.
And let me get my gun and leave my students.
Right. So a knock at the door, a knock at a window, you have no idea. Because again, if you imagine with your eyes closed, because you're not going to see the person.
Right.
And that teacher may accidentally shoot a student, may accidentally shoot a teacher. It may accidentally shoot an officer coming in saying code clear.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It just because again we go back to common sense. I mean, should we not just increase funding in the rural areas and across the state for more school resource officers?
Correct.
Because that's what the Sheriff's Association and law enforcement agents
that's
were
what
asking
they want.
for.
And oftentimes in rural areas, the sheriff's department really can't spare a deputy to sit at the school.
No.
To be at the school. And
but if they had the funding, that want to be an officer, then you would have that.
Yes.
But it's so much easier to give it to a teacher.
No.
Just so much easier.
Most of the teachers I know, the last thing they want to do is carry a gun around.
No.
They're just worried about why can't the kids get out of the car faster in the car rider line.
Right.
The last thing they want to do is have a gun.
And then the idea of carrying it too. Some people just don't know how to comfortably carry a holster.
No, I remember when I made police detective, and it was a big deal trying to figure out, what kind of clothes am I going to wear? Plain clothes. How am I going to carry this gun?
Right.
The gun belt was so heavy, it'd, pull my pants down and my skirt down, and I'd have to figure this thing out here, shoulder holster. What do I do?
Right. Well, I started out, I carried a Glock 40, and of course that barrel is pretty long.
Yeah.
So we switched over to the Glock 23s, but there are times I'm like, you can see it as much as I try to conceal it with my business blazers or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've been downtown, and just for the life of me, I've seen people put it in the back of their,
back of their waistband.
Yeah, thinking like, what are you doing? And I can see it, so I know other people can. But they're downtown,
and the amount of training that you and I took to keep somebody else from getting our gun was extensive. Because that's the last thing you want.
You will fight.
Yeah.
So and there have been times I'm like, I could easily go up to this person, but I'm not going to.
Just take it. Yeah.
But so imagine that again. That it's not incorporated in the law it's encouraged, but who's going to pay for it?
Right.
Who's going to pay for the legal insurance that should follow?
Correct. I'm so old, I was carrying a Smith & Wesson revolver.
Yes. Okay.
And as a detective, they let us carry a snub nose.
I love it.
That was how I was wearing around.
I love it. Yes.
Another topic that I know is important to you is women's health care.
Yes.
What's your stand on what our state needs to do vis-a-vis women's health care?
We do not need to even be involved in this.
Oh.
this is
really? So you don't think the government needs to be in the
No.
Exam room with the woman?
No.
Interesting.
I mean, the only person that's qualified to talk about this is Dr. Laura Andreessen.
And she just did.
Exactly.
We just had her in, and
You know.
I think her episode is going to be right before yours.
Right.
So,
But I'm a proud survivor of ovarian cancer. I was diagnosed in 2014, and my doctor here in Williamson County, very, very just involved in my my personal journey and prior to and leading up and going forward. But she was very aggressive when she came across those polyps that she found during just a normal examination.
wow.
And it was back to back to back.
Thank goodness
It was such a blessing.
Yes.
Such a blessing. I mean, the next day she was calling my oncologist who retired, Dr. Laura Williams. And I was able to meet with my doctors. I was just about to turn 40. And we had that conversation. LaRhonda, what are your thoughts about children? What are your thoughts about starting a family? Because this can become very progressive, but we need to make a decision now. And, just that opportunity to have that close conversation with my doctor. A lot of women don't, but it made a difference to save my life.
Yes.
So the idea of an elected official that is a realtor or an attorney or,
A pharmacist
or, a businessman deciding what or how someone should make a decision about their life is preposterous in my opinion.
It is.
I know people talk about, the unborn child and we have to think about that child. And our doctors do. That's what's insulting about this position is that they just assume that doctors are just telling women that they just need to abort. But those conversations are very uncomfortable. They're very close and touching. And I remember the emotions that my doctor felt. Just discussed that with me because she knew I was going to turn 40.
Right.
My 40th birthday, I was at, in the hospital, watching, the fireworks on the 4th of July going up. So it's a subject that, again, an elected official doesn't need to have any business involved in that. What a woman decides to do, or what a woman and a man, the father of the child, or the father, in particular, the husband, whatever, what they decide to do is private. And we have much more things that we can be concentrating on in government as compared to what something medically that needs to be done for a woman.
Right. I agree.
And the man too, because we got to remember those fathers go through those same emotions as well.
Sure they do.
Yeah. So it needs to be a private conversation between the patient and his or her doctor.
Yeah. I agree.
And leave it at that.
I agree. Wow. Well, we've hit on a lot of topics.
We have.
So when you get elected, what's the first bill you want to sponsor?
Well, I am transportation. Excuse me. Transportation is very important here in 65, and we'll follow that trend that Sam had started. I really want to.
And you're speaking of Sam Whitson.
Sam Whitson, yes.
Who
so informal.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Who I guess currently is still the representative for our area in 65.
Yes.
But he is retiring, and so that's why the Republicans had the primary, and Lee Reeves was selected, and now LaRhonda is challenging Lee Reeves for District 65.
Right.
And so now tell us about the transportation.
So we need to work on our roads. I mean, I see it now. Looks like all that hard work is starting to come to fruition because it seems like everywhere there's some type of movement going on, but we still need to continue with that. We just recently started discussing this pay as we go process here in Tennessee when it comes to our transportation and roads, and how one party believes that we should use the funding that we have to work on those improvements, and another party believes that no, we should pay as we go, and remember that we need to keep our funding strong. But our transportation is critical. To be able to not only to work and live, but to export and to bring businesses here into Tennessee. But also, too, to make sure that on that vote to ensure that vouchers are not approved in the House.
Okay.
And to work with legislation to look at our minimum wage, increasing that.
We haven't increased minimum wage here at all.
And it needs to be a livable wage. $7.25 is not enough.
$7.25
to do anything.
No.
And we're putting things in place, but we need to make sure that people can be able to afford to live. And then most importantly, too, looking at our grocery tax as well.
I keep hearing that here in this room is that we need to do something about repealing the grocery tax.
Yeah. When you think about economics, you provide one area to advance another. So if people can afford to buy groceries, you will see changes in healthcare because people will be healthier because they're buying healthier foods.
Right.
You will see an increase in the economy because people are healthier, they're able to work.
That's right.
And those funds that were placed aside for covering a cost of groceries can go to other means. So you can see the economy growing as well.
Right.
So it's a trickle up and trickle down effect that, again, I'm not sure why we would rather support big businesses who are going to make money regardless as compared to working with our people that need it the most.
Yeah, we definitely need to get rid of the grocery tax. And I know that some people think, well, then that's going to create a deficit. Well, there are a lot of ways that we can make that back up.
Exactly.
I know that Tennessee does not have a state income tax.
Right.
But we do have a tax on investments.
Exactly.
And we could broaden that a little bit to include, because, the tax doesn't kick in until you've made a lot of money on your investments.
Exactly.
And the numbers that are used were old numbers, and we need to, revamp that and take in a little more money from people who have $800,000-900,000 invested, I just don't know a lot of people who have that kind of money invested who would mind a little tax on that if we could get rid of the grocery tax, because then they're going to save money on their own groceries too, and they're buying the good groceries.
Right.
So they're going to save even more.
Right.
They're buying the Whole Foods groceries, right?
Exactly. I love it.
Well, this has been fun, and I want to let people know where they can get in touch with your campaign.
Yes. Then go to my website.
Which is?
LaRhonda, 410.com.
And that's LaRhonda.
Yeah.
The number 4.
TN.com.
Okay.
And of course, if you're out in Fairview, it's so funny. People say, oh, there's LaRhonda. She's comfortable wearing the T-shirts and the sweatpants when I'm out on the weekends.
Of course.
See me at Publix. You can see me at Walmart.
Say hello.
Around saying hello.
Yeah. Now, part of District 65, a good bit of it is Fairview.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also then, it's all of Fairview and then some of Franklin.
Some of Franklin, a little bit of Thompson Station.
Okay.
There's some addresses in Columbia, Prim Springs. So, you can see me around. Some people have run up to me and say, I like you just based on how you post on Facebook. Because I like to be positive and I like to inform and provide information when I come across.
You are.
But through the website, through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And again, I'm always in the community.
And if somebody wants to get a sign to put in their yard, they can let you know, or we've got some at the Williamson County Democratic Party headquarters.
Exactly. Yeah, the signs are free. I have T-shirts that are free. So, just reach out and I will hand deliver them or meet you somewhere so you can pick them up.
Well, I appreciate you running for this office. I mean, it's just not every day that you hear of someone with such a deep background, both educationally and experience-wise, who puts themselves out there and runs for a position like this.
Yes.
You are really a quality candidate, and I just hope that people will go to your website, learn a little bit more about you and where you stand on some of the issues that we've discussed today.
Yes.
And know that you're someone who believes in standing up for other people.
Yes.
And you have a basis from your mom, your dad, your faith, the way you've lived your life, the way you've devoted yourself to serving others. Mm-hmm. And I hope that people remember what LaRhonda said. She easily could have had a career making a lot of money doing other things, but she chose to help people.
Yes.
And to meet people where they are and help lift them up. So that's important. I really appreciate everybody listening today to Blue Lift. We are about lifting people up. And I want you to come back, and I also would ask that you like and share and comment on this episode. Hit me up on social media and let me know what you think about what you're hearing. You can do that on Blue Lift on our Facebook page, Instagram. We don't have a TikTok yet, but we're thinking about that. I like TikTok. I mainly look at recipes.
I love it. Yes.
And then I don't cook them. But anyway, so thanks everybody for being here, and let's make it a great day. And remember, every voice matters.